The rain poured mercilessly on the crowded streets of Manhattan, drumming against the pavement like a million tiny drums. Pedestrians rushed by, umbrellas forming a sea of black domes. In the midst of the chaos, a man stood alone, soaked, his tattered hoodie clinging to his frame. Daniel Carter had known hunger. He had known nights without shelter, the sting of humiliation, the harsh whispers of strangers who saw nothing but a failure in him. Today was no different. A group of businessmen exiting a high-end restaurant shot him disdainful glances. One sneered. "Another beggar," he muttered under his breath. Daniel didn't react. He had learned long ago that words couldn't break him, not anymore. He simply adjusted the worn cap on his head, hiding his piercing blue eyes. But then, something unexpected happened. A small girl, no older than 6, broke away from a woman in a tailored coat and ran straight up to him. She looked up, eyes wide with curiosity, then pointed at his hand. "Mister, why do you have the same ring as my mommy?" Silence fell. The woman, her expensive heels clicking against the pavement, rushed forward, grabbing the girl's hand. "Emily, don't bother him," she said, but her voice wavered. When she turned to look at Daniel, her face drained of color. Daniel slowly raised his left hand, revealing a simple but distinct platinum band. His gaze locked onto the woman's. Recognition flickered. "Hello, Olivia," he said, his voice quiet yet heavy with meaning. Her lips parted, but no words came. The businessman, watching the scene unfold, frowned in confusion. You're, she stammered. But Daniel simply smiled. The same enigmatic smile that had once sent shockwaves through boardrooms. The same smile that had been absent from the world for 6 long years. A billionaire, presumed dead. A fortune hidden. And now, an answer long overdue. 6 years ago, Daniel Carter had it all. Wealth, power, and the woman he loved, Olivia Bennett. But success breeds enemies. His business partners had betrayed him, framing him for fraud, stripping him of everything, and forcing him into hiding. The world believed he had perished in a tragic accident. He let them believe it. And now, here he was, standing before them, a ghost reborn. The men who had mocked him moments ago were now watching in stunned silence. One of them, a tall man with graying temples, finally spoke. "This is impossible," he whispered. Daniel chuckled, shaking the water from his hair. "You always underestimated me, Richard." Richard Blake, once Daniel's closest friend, now the CEO of Carter Enterprises, a company he had stolen. The color drained from Richard's face. "You should be dead," he hissed. Daniel stepped closer, lowering his voice so only Richard could hear. "And you should be in prison." A flicker of fear crossed Richard's eyes before he masked it with arrogance. "You have nothing, Daniel. You're just a washed-up ghost." Daniel smirked. "You always did love underestimating people. You stole my empire, but you never found what I hid." Richard paled. He had spent years searching for Daniel's rumored hidden assets. Billions unaccounted for. A myth, he had told himself. But what if? Before Richard could respond, Olivia spoke up, her voice tight with emotion. "Daniel, is it really you?" For the first time, he turned his full attention to her. She had changed. Her once bright eyes now carried a weight of sorrow. And yet, she was still the woman he had loved. "I never stopped looking for you," she whispered. His gaze flickered to the little girl clinging to her hand. The girl who had noticed the ring. Emily. A name he had chosen years ago, before his world had shattered. Something twisted in his chest. Before he could respond, police sirens wailed in the distance. Richard stiffened, his hand clenching. Daniel smiled again, this time with knowing amusement. "I'd say your time's up, Richard." The authorities had finally caught up to the years of corruption Richard thought he had buried. And Daniel? He had orchestrated every piece of it from the shadows. But as Richard was led away, Olivia stepped forward, tears glistening in her eyes. Where have you been all this time? Daniel looked down at the little girl, then back at Olivia. Somewhere I never should have left. Emily smiled up at him, her innocent question having unraveled a mystery years in the making. And just like that, the rain stopped.